having this class from the office, university. I forgot to take my charger home, so I had to come back all the way to the university, So it's good, right? A change for you today. All right. So today we are going to look at something very different. But before we go into the regional trade groupings, I also wish to check what is the status of your assignment, because today is the submission day, correct? Have you all done your assignment submissions?
Yes, we submitted our segment. Professor,
Where you submit?
I
Where did you submit?
I say it's no PowerPoint upload link. Do we need to upload our PowerPoint for our segment?
No need.
No need. Okay, that's cool.
No need. You only have two components. One is a group assignment. Second is your self-reflection.
Okay,
So
very good.
But I don't see any assignments in the Turnitin. So where did you put it? I can't see any assignment. Okay, wait. Let me check.
We submitted it.
Okay, I see Tan Jinui, group 3 submitted.
Yeah, that's our group.
Then Chui Jun.
Yes, we submitted.
Submitted. Then Liu Wenchao submitted, group 3. Yes. Zhang Shu, group 4 submitted. Then Hu Xiaoxing submitted. 5 groups. 5, and then Liu Yuanlan, 6 groups submitted. Only 6 groups, sir. How many members in a group?
7 group.
But I see 6 submissions, huh?
Let me check after class.
Let me cross check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups. Total how many students, huh?
35.
But my attendance list has 78 students.
Maybe it's another class.
No, it's the same class but I don't see 75. I see maximum 20 students attending my class every week, right?
Yeah.
So how all 35 students submitted? 5 students in a group, right?
Yeah.
So 35 students submitted out of 78, huh?
Maybe the operation method is wrong.
Because I can see a lot of students enrolled for this subject. This is only for this subject, but submissions are only 8 groups. Okay.
Maybe they will come very soon.
Pardon? Come again. Okay, so if you know your friends who have not submitted the assignments, may I request all of you to remind them to submit the group assignment. Okay, so who is the group leader? Is it Cheng Yan? You know who is the group leader? Hello? 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 Who is the group leader? Any idea? Is it Chui Jun? Are you the group leader? Who is the class leader? Is any class leader for this class? You also don't know who is the class leader. Huh? Okay.
Professor,
Hi.
I think the name you just mentioned should be the group leader. So
Cheng Yan.
yeah, Cheng Yan is the class lead.
Cheng Yan, are you there? I think it's not there. That's why. Okay, maybe you can remind Cheng Yan to check with other students whether they are part of this class. Okay, please do so. So that way, if they have not submitted, we can at least help other students to submit the assignments. Because if you don't submit assignments, you cannot pass, you will fail. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Chen Yan is reminding the group leader in the WeChat group now. So
Yes, please, please. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that part.
I think that due time is tonight.
Yeah.
2015, right?
It's okay. They can submit tonight also, no problem. But I'm just checking, you know. So I find 7 groups there, others not there. So
Okay.
yeah, you please remind your friends to submit it, okay?
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, guys. Before we go into the class today, I want to take you back to the assignment. I hope you remember the assignment, right? Maybe what we can do is...
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Group 6. Six number. I'm sorry, we forgot to submit the group assignment. Please change the due time. We will as soon as possible to submit. Maybe in 2 hours or 1 hour or half an hour, we must suddenly can submit.
Today, right? You want to submit today, right?
Okay. Please change the due time. Okay.
The due date, I mean the time, you can submit until what time? Let me check. Submission. You have time until 8th August.
Okay.
I mean, the due date is 7th August, that is today. Today, 8 p.m.
Okay, we will submit as soon as possible before the 8 o'clock.
Okay, great. That's great. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. So let's come back to the assignment. So I just want to check, all of you have signed here, student declaration signed, all members, at least type your name there, okay? Have you used this cover page? All of you? For your assignment?
Our group have not used this cover page.
You have to use this cover page. That's why this is given to you. This cover page is important and you have to put your name in the student's declaration. Type your name there. Okay. That's important. So in your assignment, I believe you have given an introduction. Then you have done a background of the study. Then you have done an environmental scan using pestle analysis. Then you have done a cultural analysis using Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Then you have identified the target entry, market entry strategies. And then you discussed about the timing of the entry, then finally provided recommendations. I believe you have done all these 7 tasks. Correct? All of you have done? Because if you see, the marks are based on the 7 tasks, 8 tasks. The last one is structuring, formatting, and referencing. So this is based on your overall presentation, the last part, okay? That means if you have done good referencing, the formatting is very good, the structuring is very good, you get 10 points for that, 10 marks for that. So total you have 100 marks. So in order to pass, you need to get, if you see, 6 marks out of 10, which is 9 marks out of 15 and so on. Only then you will get your 60 marks. So this is a minimum requirement. I hope you have looked at all these very clearly. Okay, now let's go on to the second part of your assignment, which is self-reflection, which carries 20 marks. Anybody has done this part so far? Not yet, right? Because you have deadline is week 11. Another 2 more weeks to go for you to submit this, because today is week 9, okay? So you can submit by week 11, 2,500 words. There are 4 questions you have to answer. This is individual, okay? Individual, not group. So everybody has to submit 1 assignment. So if there are 35 students, there must be 35 assignments. Please understand this. It's not a group assignment. This individual. Clear, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, good. So there are 4 questions you need to answer. Discuss the major learnings from the group assignment and overall course. So it's very easy to answer this question. What you need to do is, what did you learn from your group assignment? You can learn many things from your group assignment, right? Maybe you learn to work in a group. You learn some communication leadership skills. You learn to collaborate with one another. No, there are many learnings from this group assignment. You learn to work virtually online. These are all learnings. So you can talk about all these learning. And then what did you learn from the overall course? Overall course, you look at the learning outcome. There are 3 major learning outcomes. So those you can, refer to. These are the learning outcomes. I'll show you. So these are the learning outcomes. So Have you improved your communication and leadership? Do you know how to support corporate sustainability, social responsibility, ethics? Okay. Have you learned to discuss various solutions for international business problems? This is what you're doing in your group assignment basically, right? Then have you learned to integrate managerial and entrepreneurial skills in social decisions and international economies? So you see, you can talk based on these three learning outcomes. Okay, you have learned these, learned from the course, even you can talk about different topics that you learned. Maybe you learned about Hofstede's dimensions, you learned about cultural integration, you learned about ethnocentrism, you learned about SRC, you remember? Then you learned about country of origin, so many concepts. You learned about market entry strategies, you learned about timing of entry, so many things you have learned from this course. So you can highlight those points and how this has helped you as a student. You can talk about that. So this has to be your own writing. You won't get it any in from your internet. Okay, so please write in your own words what you learned from the group assignment and then what you learned from the course. So that carries 25 marks. Okay, so 12 marks you can talk about what you learned from group assignment. Then another maybe 13 marks you talk about what you learned from your overall course. Clear? Did you understand question number 1? Any question on question number 1? Ask me if you have questions. Anybody?
No questions. It's very clear.
Okay, good. So question number B, okay, question number B. Discuss 4 communication strategies to support corporate sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and ethics associated with the company's international business decision making. So we are looking at communication strategies. Okay, just give me a few seconds, please.
Okay, no problem.
Hi guys, I'm back. Sorry, I had to attend a call. So you can discuss any communication strategies. I'm sure if you read my ebook given, you'll find some communication strategies there. Okay, this is something you have to contribute. So I'm not going to discuss what is going to be, because I want it to be different, something unique. Okay, because your communication strategy is meant to support corporate sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and ethics. 3 areas. Okay, so you think what kind of communication strategies, we can look at some kind of PR campaigns. You can look at CSR, corporate social responsibility activities and campaigns. You can look at advertisements. There are different ways of communicating, but if you go through my ebook, which is attached in your LMS, I'm sure you will get some ideas as to what strategy will be suitable for you. Okay, and the C, third point, discuss with example how the culture of a country has influenced you as a business student. So here, think of another country's culture, not China. Okay, don't take China. You think about maybe the country that you have taken for your assignment, or maybe if you have visited Malaysia or Singapore or Thailand, or or any other country that you have visited or you are familiar with. Maybe you never went out of China, so in that case you're familiar with, you have read about, you have seen, and so on. So how the culture of that country, for example, if you visit Malaysia, how Malaysian culture has influenced you. No, you have to say how it has influenced you as a business student. You understand? So maybe the food has influenced you, the dress has influenced you, maybe the religion has influenced you, maybe the political system has influenced you, maybe the language has influenced you. There could be many things that has influenced you. So you can talk about those and give some good examples. Okay. And fourth is discuss 4 leadership strategies to support corporate sustainability, responsibility, and ethics. Again, the leadership strategies you can find definitely in the ebook that is given to you, that is attached in your LMS. So if you start reading, chapters on leadership, I'm sure you'll get some good idea. Maybe week 11 I'll be discussing also, but it will be too late. So that's why I want you to read the leadership strategies from the book, and then you can use those in your writing. Okay. So it's quite simple. There's no nuclear science involved here. So I hope you can just look at this, and do not copy from internet, because this is supposed to be your own personal writing, your own personal learning. Don't worry about mistakes in grammar. I don't penalize you for that. Okay, try to write in your own words. All right. Okay, good. So, and the marking scheme is given here, 25 marks for each question, so total 100 marks. So there is no group presentation for you, so no need of PowerPoint submissions, only 2-piece assignment. Then there will be a final examination, which is for 40%. I'll discuss with you on final exam maybe next week. Okay, how you need to prepare and so on. So don't worry about that also. Okay, I'll take care of it. So any questions so far on this part of the assignment? Anything you want to ask me?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
The cover of group assignment, we need we use one cover with picture. We must change the cover.
This cover, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
We need-
this must be the standard cover that should be used.
And the other cover is wrong, so we need to change the cover.
Yes.
Okay.
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 And please put your student ID, student name. Okay. Your student ID, then student name. Then here you please sign digital signature. Okay. Just digitally. That means you put your name here. That is enough. So this is very important, this cover.
The
So
size,
this-
one group have 5 members, and
so
5 students need to sign here.
yes, sign does not mean, signing with your hand. You can just type the name there, 5 names.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Just because if you can sign, if you have a digital pen, you can sign. If not, don't worry. Just type the name of the student.
Yeah. 5 person's name.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
I have a question about cover page. No matter individual assignment and group assignment, all we need to use this standard cover page. Okay.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes, we know.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So that's it. Any question so far on your assignments? I believe everything is okay. 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 So let's go into today's session. So today we are going to look at cross-national cooperation and agreements and different trade agreements, trade blocks, treaties. This is the point of discussion. Okay, so we'll be looking at from different regional corporations. Okay, maybe we have, Europe, there is some groupings for trade. Asia, there is another grouping. Africa, there is another grouping for trade, and so on. So let us get familiarized with these trade blocks or trade groupings, so that at the end of the day, because if you are planning to go to another country for business, then you should also be aware of these trade groupings. That's very important. Okay. So we are going to look at the international economic integration. Then we look at World Trade Organization. Then we also look at regional economic integration. Then we look at different regional trade groupings. Then we also look at the United Nations as an international organization. So this is what we are going to do today. Okay, so it's going to be an interesting session because I'm sure you are quite familiar with some of these points. So I hope you can participate in the discussion today. Okay, especially if, let's say, if you're working in a company which is exporting or importing, then you must be quite familiar with these, groupings, be it from Asia or from Europe or from America or from Africa. Okay, so let's start with GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. So the idea, if you see, was what made GATT to move to WTO. Obviously, GATT is a predecessor to WTO. So the whole idea behind GATT or WTO was that we remove any kind of discrimination in the trade, and there is a global body where everybody can go in case there is a kind of dispute or discrimination taking place. So that's why whenever there are trade disputes between countries, they go to WTO and they file a case there, and then the case is heard in the court under WTO, and they award who is right, who is wrong. Something interesting. So let's look at the story here. So in 1947, 23 countries formed General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. Obviously, this was under the banner of United Nations. Why? Why did they form the GATT? Because they wanted to abolish quotas and reduce all kinds of tariff. Tariffs means customs duties, import duties, and so on. Okay. So in 1995, GATT was replaced with WTO, World Trade Organization. And if you go to the WTO's website, you can see the number of countries who are members. Okay. Now, what is the fundamental principle? It says that there must be equality and the markets must be open to every country to trade with. So there is fairness and equality, and everybody has access to every market. So this principle is called, trade without discrimination. And this is based on most favored nation concept, okay, MFN. MFN is a concept which is, it is a kind of, treaty conferred by one country to another. For example, China can give a most favored nation to Malaysia, which means if that is conferred, then there will be special arrangement on trade and bilateral business relationship, which means there won't be any discrimination. There won't be tariffs or reduced tariffs between these two countries and so on. So once a country is agreed to reduce tariff, this will automatically extend to every other member country, irrespective whether the country has signed to the agreement. This is something very interesting, okay? So GATT finally led to the creation of WTO. So we'll be looking at WTO a bit to understand. So let me take you to the home page of WTO. So this is the home page of WTO. So you can read about WTO. What is WTO? What do we do? What WTO stands for? What is the history of GATT and WTO? You can read the brochure, introductory brochures about WTO, Everything is given here. If you go through these about WTO, you get a fair idea about WTO in terms of annual reports, World Trade reports, statistics. Okay, it's very interesting. Then if you look at the trade topics, like what are the topics that are covered under WTO, like agriculture, anti-dumping, balance of payment, customs valuation, GATT or GATT, okay, import licensing. There's so many factors covered. Even services is covered, intellectual property is covered, dispute settlement body is there. Then there's a regional trade agreement for transparency. Then the Doha rounds minutes are there. Then trade monitoring, how they do it, and so on and on. And if you look at the WTO membership, you can look at the key members here. So this is the member list, okay? You find the member list. You can go in alphabetically, you can look at, okay, starting with A and so on and on. So almost every country, if you see with the green color, are member countries and observer negotiating accession. So these are the observers like Sudan, Libya, Iraq, Turkmenistan, and Belarus. So these are the observers, and they are negotiating the access to WTO. So it's a very interesting website. You have plenty of information. You also get the statistics and resources. For example, you're doing some research, you want to get some data, you find plenty of data here. So this is a gold mine for researchers, especially if you're doing some research on global business. Okay, some of the data is free, some are paid. Okay, but quite a lot of data you get here, the statistics and so on. So you can look at this information, and this is going to help you and your business. Okay, so whatever you need to know about WTO is stated here. So I don't have to, keep talking about WTO. This is meant for you to do your self-exploration and study so that it becomes interesting for you. All right. So there is a WTO. So mainly WTO was, focusing on reciprocal trade negotiations and enforcement of trade agreements, These were some of the issues they were looking at, and they also looked at the most favored nation, MFN, treatments to different countries, and they were focusing on trade dispute settlements between different countries. For example, if there is a dispute between China and India on anti-dumping, where will they go to? They go to WTO. They file a case with WTO, and both of them try to prove that the other is wrong. And then based on evidences submitted, WTO will make a decision whether it was anti-dumping or not. Same way, China and Australia, or China and Japan, if you see, all these cases are with WTO, okay? And that they are the one who will finalize the case. So WTO is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, and it has got around 170 members, I would say, approximately, because I don't know which country was added of recent. So there are three main goals, if you see, are to promote international trade, reduce trade barrier, and resolve trade disputes. So these are some of the objectives of this particular organization. So what are the principles on which WTO work? There are a few principles. Number one, no discrimination. So that's the first principle of WTO. The members should not discriminate between trading partners, which means all members of WTO are given most favored nation status. It is not given to some only. Okay, no discrimination between their own and foreign products, services, or nations, which means you can't discriminate between your product and another country's product. That is also part of non-discrimination. Second principle is based on freedom. So, low trade barrier through negotiation. That means there will be very little trade barrier or zero trade barrier. So when I say trade barrier, we have studied different types of trade barriers in last 2 weeks, if you remember. So there we talked about trade barriers which are monetary and non-monetary trade barriers, if you remember, right? So there shouldn't be trade barriers. And these trade barriers, even if there are, it must be reduced to an acceptable level by the member countries. So this is something that is very, very important. Third is predictability, which means the tariffs and barriers should not be arbitrary. Arbitrary means suddenly I introduce customs duty. Tomorrow morning I say, your customs duty will be 40%. That cannot be. So that means whatever changes are made, it is communicated well in advance and everybody agree upon. That's why we say predictable. That's why we say there is no arbitrary raise in trade barrier. That means tariffs and non-tariff barriers should not be increased without prior consent. So this is the third point or third principle that we're talking about. And the fourth principle is competitiveness. That means there should not be any unfair trade practices. When we say unfair trade practices, it can involve mostly subsidies. China is giving subsidies to its own farmers so that they can sell their farm products at a very low price to another country. So this is not competitive in nature. Or US is giving subsidies to their agri products. Or Canada is giving, subsidies. So, or India is giving subsidies to sugar farmers so that they can export sugar at a very low price. So, or cotton for that matter. So these kind of, unfair trade practices shouldn't be there. And finally, it should be beneficial for less developed countries, especially the so-called third world countries we are referring to. They should be benefited from the whole arrangement. That means the customers from those countries must be able to afford your products and services. It shouldn't be set at a very high price. So main points, if you look at 5 points or 5 principles, number one, we're talking about no discrimination. Number two, we are talking about lowered trade barriers. Number three, predictability in policies and no arbitrary raise in trade barriers, be it monetary or non-monetary or non-tariff. And then there should not be any unfair trade practices. It should be competitive in nature. And finally, it must be beneficial to less developed countries. So there are some differences between WTO and GATT if you look at. Number one, WTO has a broader mandate. That means there are more member countries involved in WTO when compared to GATT. Okay, and the WTO's enforcement powers are much, much bigger because WTO, if you see, has got bigger numbers in terms of member countries when compared to GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. Okay, so these are the two differences in terms of dimensions. Number one, broader mandate. Number two, it has got a stronger enforcement powers. Now, what are the challenges WTO faces? We need to understand those. Okay, definitely challenges are related to GATT's General Agreement on Trade in Services. This is a challenge because they wanted to reduce barrier to trade in services, because many countries have put up, tariff and non-tariff barriers when it comes to exchanging services. Now, services, when we say services, we are referring to maybe, call centers, then IT, banking, education, training. There are so many, services, hospitality, health, insurance, telecom. These are all services basically, though there are products involved, but at the end of the day, you're getting services. So the Uruguay round developed certain principles, especially for trading services. Then there was agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, TRIPS. TRIPS, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. Okay. So what happened to this? So entrepreneurs, artists, and inventors have been hurt by inadequate enforcement by many countries of law, prohibiting illegal usage, copying, or counterfeiting, or intellectual property. Now, this is a major issue, intellectual property rights violation. So counterfeiting, copycatting is a major issue. You come out with the latest iPhone, within a month you find another smartphone mimicking the features of iPhone. You understand? Or you come out with an app or an automobile, and within no time you find a copycat. So that is where, intellectual property rights comes into the picture. So intellectual property rights can be in the form of copyrights, in the form of patents, and so on. So you have to go in for intellectual property rights, and most of the Asian countries, they are very, very far behind when it comes to applying for patents and copyrights and so on, because they take it for granted or they are ignorant about it. So as a result, some other countries actually counterfeit them, copy them, and then they patent it. All right. So this is happening to especially films, music, softwares, and so on. The third one was TRIM. TRIM stands for Trade-Related Investment Measures Agreement. So what happened that the Trade-Related Investment Measures Agreement in the Uruguay round is a modest start toward eliminating national regulations on FDI that may distort or restrict trade. Now, many countries have FDI restrictions. They give different reasons. Number one, they want to protect the local economy. Number two, it's about the pride and prestige and the feeling of nationalism to have your own industry. So there are different reasons why companies say no, or countries say no to FDI, or they limit FDI. Now look at most of the countries have limited foreign direct investment, or FDI, in certain sensitive sectors. It could be defense sector, telecommunication sectors, railways, mining, petrochemicals, or uranium enrichment, and so on. Maybe because of their national interest, keeping the defense priority in mind, they say, sorry, foreigners cannot come and do business in these areas because it will threaten our national safety. You understand? So that's why this trim was there. And when it comes to enforcement of, the WTO decisions, there was no enforcing power. Though rules were framed, the GATT was not able to enforce many of the rules it framed. So WTO, a country failing to live up to the agreement may have to complain filed against it. If WTO panel finds the country in violation of the rule, the panel will likely to ask the country to eliminate the trade barrier. If the country refuses, the WTO will allow the complaining country to impose trade barrier on the offending country equal to the damage caused by the trade barrier. Furthermore, the offending country is not allowed to counter-retaliate by imposing a new trade barrier against the complainant. So, for example, if Malaysia finds that Indonesia is charging exorbitantly high import duty on Malaysian palm oil or some other products, or durian or whatever it is, so they can go to WTO, file a case. Then WTO will ask them to withdraw this trade barrier, and at the same time permit Malaysia to impose trade barrier on, let's say, Indonesia for a certain period of time. So it's a kind of, you do it to me, I do it to you, it's a kind of tit for tat situation or scenario. Okay. So this is the additional challenges that WTO is facing. Now, these are some of the unions or economic integrations regionally that you can find. There is a political union, economic union, common markets, customs union, and free trade area. A political union, now if you see degree of economic integration, when it comes to political union, the economic integration is higher. Free trade area, as we come towards to the bottom, the economic integration is lesser. And as we move upward towards political union, the economic integration is much, much higher. So let's look at the free trade area. So free trade area is between few countries, member countries, maybe one or two countries or three countries. They can form a, group. For example, we have ASEAN. ASEAN, right? Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's a free trade area. So the 10 countries which are member countries, including Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Laos, Philippines, etc. So there is a free movement of goods and people and services between these countries. But this has got a limited implication. Next is customs union. So they have a free trade area. The members adopt common trade policies toward non-member countries. That means all members can have a common policy towards a non-member country. Thirdly, we have the common market. It's nothing but a customs union. Okay, we'll study what is a customs union. Okay, members more fully in, members also eliminate barriers that restrict movement of factors of production among themselves. So they will take away most of the barriers, especially when it comes to markets. Then we have economic union. Members more fully integrate their economies by coordinating their economic policies. So if you look at the European Union, it is an economic and political union, right? So by encompassing both political and economic integration, the union effectively transforms itself into one country. So if you look at European Union, though they're all independent countries, when it comes to trade, there's a free movement of goods, services, and people. That means people can go to any country without a visa. They can drive across the border. They can purchase goods. They can get a job, and so on and on. Okay. So this is the highest level of economic integration that we're looking at. So free trade area, as we said, is, however, each member establishes its own trade policies against non-members. As a result, they are vulnerable to trade deflection, in which non-members reroute exports to the member nation with the lowest external trade barriers. Now, for example, let's say India bans some of the Chinese products in India. It says ban on China, made in China products. So what can China do? China can reroute those products to, let's say, Thailand and label it as made in Taiwan, and it can be sent to India. You understand? So this is another way of deflecting these kind of situations. Okay. Second is a customs union. So it eliminates internal trade barriers among its members and adopt common external trade policies toward non-members. The uniform treatment of products from non-member countries minimize the trade deflection problem. So if every member is acting in the same way, so a non-member cannot escape. Then we have a common market, as we studied. Okay, eliminates barriers that inhibit movement of factors of production among members, and economic union, and finally a political union. So let's look at each of these as we go ahead. So we have a free trade area, okay? So what happens in a free trade area? So there is no trade barrier among the members. Trade barriers could be tariff or non-tariff. Each member establishes its own trade policies against non-members, which means there is no common policy against non-member. Let's say Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines have got a trade grouping or free trade area. And let's say Brunei is not a member of that grouping. There is no common policy towards Brunei from these three countries, but each country has its own policy towards Brunei when it comes to trade. So we did look at the country of origin issue, if you remember, a few classes before. So the country of origin issue says that if a product is originating from a particular country, then a country may say no to that product due to many reasons. You can, for example, Australian made wines no more imported to China. You understand? Or products from Iran no more can be exported to the rest of the world. So this kind of country of origin issue is a major problem when it comes to international business. Customs union, as we said, yes, it eliminates trade barriers, There's a common policy by the members towards a non-member. That's the biggest difference. Common policy or common trade barrier towards non-member. Then we have the common market. That's what we just saw, okay. And economic unions. Economic and political unions are the most important ones, which are quite successful, especially if you look at European Union. European Union is a classical example of economic and political union. Okay, so it eliminates internal trade barriers, then adopt common external trade policy, abolish restrictions on the mobility of factors of production, requires members to coordinate their economic policies, and so on, and political union. So we have seen this. So maybe it is time that we look at some more points on each of these. What are the pros and cons of economic integration? Pros and cons means advantages and disadvantages. So if you look at the advantages, a few advantages we have listed down here. Open markets of members countries, lower production distribution cost, improved international competitiveness. So these are all advantages and there is no debate about it. It's self-explanatory. And disadvantages threaten less efficient firms. Yes, it's very true. If your firm or your company is less efficient, because it is all about competitiveness. Competitiveness means lower the price, reduce the cost of production. And it harms specific sectors in the economy and favors powerful special interest groups. These are the drawbacks. For example, if your country is very powerful economically, this economic integration, because you will be playing the role of the leader. Like if you look at the European Union, Germany is playing the role of the leader today because UK is no more part of that particular integration, correct? So Germany is dominating most of the time when it comes to discussions and things. You find Germany leading the way, which many other countries, in fact, do not like. So look at the static effect and dynamic effect in terms of benefits. Okay, the static effect, the trade creation, we have something called as trade creation, production shift to move efficient producers for reasons of comparative advantage, which means, let's say you have economic integration, let's say in European Union, but there itself, if you find that there are countries which are offering more qualified and talented and educated people with low pay scale or salary, they might move their company from country A to country B. It's a possibility. But in terms of dynamic effect, you find it's economics of scale. Yes, it reduces cost. Increased competition is very true. So obviously it's got, both negative and positive, the pros and cons to look at. So trade creation, trade diversion, trade, these are some of the issues that we see when it comes to this kind of regional groupings. Okay, before we go into economic union, do you have any questions? Any questions?
No questions so far.
All right, I managed to drink some water. Meanwhile,
Yeah, we always drink a cup of tea.
oh, you have the Chinese tea?
Yeah. We always don't talk the tea.
That's a good idea. I should also take a cup of tea, you know. Okay, a bit for boiling. Okay, so you understand the basic concept of trade groupings, right? Okay, so if you have no questions, we will move further, complete a few more slides before we take a break. So we look at European Union, okay? So European Union, you know, it's an interesting story for you to look at. So here we have the official website of the European Union. You can have a look at it. Okay, so about the European Union, priorities, what are the priorities up to 2024? EU citizenship, EU countries. Okay, there are some part of the EU but do not follow the euro. So these are the member countries, if you see. So we have excluding UK. I'm sure the Brexit, many of you are quite familiar with the term Brexit. Brexit stands for British exit of European Union. Okay, from 2016, they started the whole concept of, you know, separation from European Union, and only last 2 years they managed to achieve, you know, the separation. But even then, still there are a lot of things not clear. So there are still some of the European countries not part of this, like Switzerland. Switzerland is still not part of European Union. Okay, so you can read here who are the member countries. So currently there are 27 member countries. Earlier it was 28, but UK withdrew officially on January 31, 2020. Okay. So you can look at the topics. What do they do for different, maybe agriculture, business, customs. Then what is the EU law, life, documents. If you're looking for some reports and studies, statistics, you'll find it here. Okay, and there are also resources for teachers and so on, slide presentations and so on. So if you want to make a presentation on European Union, maybe you get some very good PowerPoints here, you know. Click here, you will find very nice, you know, PowerPoints. Some in PDF, some in PPT, and so on. So you find plenty of interesting resources in this website. Just as you explored WTO, I hope you can explore European Union website too, because it's going to be an eye-opener, you know, for you. So please take some time to look at this particular, you know, website. Okay. So the European Union, if you look at the major agenda, free trade of goods, services, capital, and people. This is the most important characteristics of European Union. Then there is a common external tariff and common currency. Common currency is euro. Okay. So they follow the common currency, they have a common external tariff, then the free movement of goods, people, capital, services, everything. So people can travel, you know, that's why you have something called a Schengen visa, with the help of which you can travel from any European country without any problem, right? So what prompted European Union to come about? So after the World War II, if you see, the European political leaders realized that greater cooperation among their countries would help speed up recovery of the European countries. So many organizations were formed, including the European Economic Community, EEC, which eventually emerged as the organization called European Union. So it has got many governing bodies, which includes European Commission, European Council, European Parliament, European Court of Justice, and European Central Bank, and so on. So all these governing bodies together form European Union. All right. So I think you got some idea or some more idea about European Union. What are the other aspects or areas of which comes under the purview of European Union? So this could be the antitrust investigations. They enforce antitrust in a very aggressive way, antitrust laws, okay, including high-tech companies like Microsoft, Google. Now, if you remember, recently, Google was fined, just last year, or early this year, Google was fined huge sum of money. Even Microsoft was fined huge sum of money on antitrust because, and also based on the Competition Act. Okay. So companies like Microsoft and Google on charges that they were harming competitors because of their dominant market positions. Apple and Amazon on suspicion that they were receiving unfair tax advantages from Ireland and Luxembourg, and Facebook on allegations that it was violating privacy policies. So Europe is very particular about all these things. So if you can read through newspapers, you'll find cases on big companies, huge companies on a regular basis, and they are asked to pay a hefty amount, which comes to sometimes billions of dollars as penalty. I mean, that's an easy money for European Union also. So these are the antitrust, investigations that they are involved in. Then we have the monetary union. So in 1992, they came with the concept of euro, right? So the common currency in 1992 came about, which is called euro. And because of euro, there is no trade barrier because they all use the same currency to trade with member countries. And they also formed a Schengen area in order to facilitate free flow of people from one country to another. The Schengen Agreement was signed in 1990, which means there is no rules or limiting factor when it comes to crossing border for people of European Union. So with the help of, even when you're applying for a tourist visa, you apply for a Schengen visa, so you can visit all 27 countries without taking, individual visas in that particular country. So that is the advantage of that Schengen visa. Okay? And this is based on the Schengen agreement that was signed in 1990. And they're also looking for expanding membership. So countries include Turkey, then Serbia, Yugoslav Republic, and so on, okay? But obviously it is not easy to get into European Union, and it's not easy to get out also. So many countries are quite skeptical about joining European Union. I'm sure if the market conditions continue like this for another 2-3 years, countries like Germany, France, or even other countries might leave European Union, because already smaller countries are complaining of dominance by France and Germany in the European Union. So smaller countries feel that they are subjugated and dominated by these countries. Then we also need to look at the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. It is called the TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. So what happens here? This agreement that involves the United States and the European Union. So what do? The tariffs between European Union and the EU, the tariff is very low now, as of now, but the relationships, are ups and downs, especially during the time of Trump. Okay, during the time of Trump, you have seen he was not cooperating with the European Union. He moved out of Paris Climate Treaty. He moved out of World Health Organization, and so on and on. There are so many incidences that happened. So one of the priority for the Biden government, as soon as they took charge, was to rejoin the Paris Climate Treaty, to tell the world that they're very serious about reducing the global warming effect. So I'm sure all those flooding that you see in your own country, be it China, be it India, be it Germany, be it France, be it Saudi Arabia, it's because of global warming. And everyone has acknowledged the fact that we need to reduce the carbon emission level. And if you don't reduce the carbon emission level by 7% in the next 2 years, we cannot reduce the global temperature by 2%. And if you can't reduce the global temperature by 2%, the sea level is going to rise. And if sea level is going to rise, means many of the global major cities are going to go underwater by 2050. Even cities like California, Mumbai, Calcutta, Beijing, they all will go underwater because of global warming. We are just talking about another 30 years. Within 30 years, it's going to happen. So if that should not happen, then in that case, we need to reduce carbon emission and global warming. So this is a major factor that countries are concerned about. So this basically refers to the European Union. Obviously, UK is not part, so UK should have a different color. Okay. All right. So this, the European Union countries, if you see, Based on the color, you can see when they entered and so on. Okay. Original 6-member countries like Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Italy, Switzerland, not a member. So if you see in 1950, France was Germany, Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg signed the Treaty of Rome, establishing the European Economic Community. So this is the initial phase, okay? The first part of the story. Then in 1970, UK, Denmark, Ireland joined the EEC. Then 80s, Greece, Portugal, and Spain entered the European Community. Okay, and 1993, 12 EC, that is European Community members, signed the Treaty of Maastricht. EC became known as IU, that is in 1993. 95, Austria, Finland, Sweden joined EU, and in 2004, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia became EU members. And in 2007, Bulgaria and Romania joined the EU. 2013, Croatia joined the EU, bringing total member to 28. But in June 2016, British voters chosen to withdraw from the EU, exit in March 2019, but it happened in 2020 only. Okay, so this is the story behind the European Union. The timeline is stated clearly here, when, what happened. You can go through this. And these are the governing bodies in the European Union. You have the European Council in Brussels, Belgium. The Councils of the European Union, again, Brussels. European Commission, European Parliament is in France, and European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. So these 5 institutions put together constitute the governing body of European Union. All right. So I think it's time for a small break. Let's take a break, come back after some time. Okay, guys.